All right, what's up, community? This is Cloaken. I'm here with Jean-Eric Khalife. This is really exciting. This is the beginning of a new series that we're trying out here called Meet the Team. And it's just an opportunity for us to talk a little bit more about who we are as a team, how we work together, and introduce folks to you that you might not get a chance to see on some of the other content that we do, folks who are really pivotal to what we're doing as a company. And, the coolest part about this series is going to be my opportunity to actually get to know these folks together as well. We're working so hard on this game that we often don't get to ask some of these questions, these get to know you things. So I'm actually a little bit jealous of the opportunity to do this. I get to know the team a little bit more intimately in ways we sometimes don't get to talk about. So Jean-Eric, thank you for being here, man. This is awesome. I'm very excited to learn more about your past and also to introduce you to the community around this game. So hope you're doing well. How are you today, my man?
I'm doing good, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is going to be awesome, dude. Well, let's kick things off just with a little introduction. Let's talk a little bit about how you got into games and then maybe move into Super Evil Megacorp in general as a team, because I know you and I both are pretty new to this team, and we have some commonalities in terms of coming from pretty big game development houses prior to this. So you and I have gone through a pretty big shift in terms of the environment we're in as developers. So I'm anxious to hear a little bit about how you got to where you are and then maybe talk a little bit about some of those differences. So
Yeah, so hi everyone. I'm John-Eric Khalife. I'm the technical art director here. I'm also JXE on Discord if you guys ever want to message me or see me around. Um, so yeah, how did I get my start in the industry? I've always been a huge gamer. My oldest memory is actually of me playing Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles on the NES at my best friend's house in France, where I was born. And so my mom said I used to like play Pac-Man even when I was like a 2-year-old, you know. So I've always been a huge gamer, and it's always been a part of my life. But it never really clicked for me that I could like make games. And when I was about it must have been in like middle school, so like 12 to 14, something like that. StarCraft was a really big thing, and I used to love playing StarCraft, and I specifically loved playing the like custom game modes in StarCraft.
yeah,
That so people would like create their own missions and maps, and there was one specifically that was like Final Fantasy VII in StarCraft that I was like absolutely in love with. I was like, man, this is amazing. I was actually in high school now that I'm connecting some dots again.
nice.
And I was absolutely in love. And I'm like, I want to make these. Like, what if this other level in Final Fantasy was in StarCraft? Like, how would it be built? What characters
Mm,
would be who? And I like, got so excited. And so I started downloading all of the stuff to make, your own maps. And then I realized that like you needed a PC to actually make them. And
mm.
my parents had a Mac growing up. And so I took a summer job and started saving up money and bought a PC and finally like got everything set up and then I realized I had no idea how to code anything and so I'm like
I
oh,
love it,
okay,
dude. You
like
just took all the little steps to
yeah.
kind of make your way down the path. It's super awesome.
Exactly. And so I took some coding classes in high
Mm,
school and then ended up uh, getting into a college with studying computer science and by that time I had like stopped playing StarCraft, but it kind of like set me down this course
mm,
to start getting into gaming. And so yeah, I started studying computer science, and all of my classes were really geared towards like the software developer that's sitting behind a desk and making office software, which is not what I wanted to do. So
right.
I stopped like studying computer science and actually started making websites with a friend of mine on the side and he ended up teaching me graphic design and I absolutely like fell in love with that and ended up getting an internship as a graphic designer. um, but when I was like, okay, I want this to be my degree, my school was like, oh, you'll have to take another year of college if you want
Hmm.
that to be your degree. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. And so I was like, you know what, at the end of the day, a computer science degree is going to be more valuable to me as long as my portfolio is in a good place as a graphic designer. Like
Mm,
that's what's going to get me a job. So like, let me just do both.
yeah.
And so I kept studying computer science, finished all my classes. And then at my last year in school, my school offered a games course. And I was like, yes.
Dude.
And started learning how to code games and was making art for my games and was just like absolutely in love. And
Mm,
we had like a competition where these judges came in from like Blizzard and Obsidian and all this stuff, and one of them offered one of my friends like a interview, and
Hmm.
he found out at the end that it was for an unpaid internship, and he was like, I need money, man. I can't
Yeah.
take this. I was like, you give me that email right now. Like I'm gonna apply to it. I'm gonna get that internship. And
That's
so
awesome, dude.
yeah, so I sent them an email and I was like, hey, I know you interviewed my buddy. I'm super interested. Like I'd love to, like, here's my computer science resume, here's my portfolio. Like you just tell me what you want me to do and I'll do it.
Yeah,
And ended up getting my first internship, unpaid internship, making 1,000 icons for a D&D game at Obsidian. Uh,
dude,
and I was in heaven, like
that's
I was
awesome.
making games. I was learning so much from the people around me and was absolutely in love. I was still going to school full time and I still had
Hmm.
2 jobs on the side to like pay the bills, but
Yeah.
like it was worth it for this internship, like I was going to do whatever it took to get into games. And so that's kind of like what got my start in the industry. And then I took some interesting paths while I was in there, but that was
Yeah.
kind of the beginning of it. Yeah.
Dude, shout out. First off, there's so much in there that I find super fascinating, but I want to give a shout out to all of those people out there who are modding games in games like StarCraft or Warcraft 3, like any of these moddable games, Skyrim, anything that has an editor and you have the opportunity to get in there and make your own vision of a thing. Like there are countless stories that I've heard of people who've made their way into games just
Oh
through that
yeah.
pathway. And I think it's amazing. And by the way, the folks who are making games in StarCraft 2, I've seen some crazy things that I blew my mind. First person shooters with the StarCraft 2 engine, like
Yeah.
stuff. First off, using those tools is often not super documented and it's already hard. Like there's a little bit of like tribal knowledge to become savvy with some of those tools. It's not like Unreal Engine where part of their business is making sure the engine itself or the ways in which you're making games
Hmm.
is easy, right? Or not easy, or at least knowable, right?
Right.
There's some arcaneness to these dev tools when you're on a development team that's very in-house. And
Hmm.
so the fact that people are even able to make functional games is already a hurdle above being inside that development house, not with intimate knowledge around the tool. So it's huge. Shout out to all the modders out there. You guys are doing a cool thing. You're learning more about making games than it's easy to say. Like, and Jean-Eric, your story is one of like the birth of a tech artist. I feel like it's like
Yeah.
it's the perfect story for like how tech art is born. And for anyone who's out there who doesn't know a lot about what tech art is, I would, love to maybe hear a little bit more about the latter part of your career, but also a little bit more specifically about what that role is
Mhm.
and why your background is such a perfect, I think, foundation for that kind of work.
Yeah, absolutely. So the best way to kind of define tech art, and there's a million definitions, but
Yeah.
I kind of see this, there's this like, art on one side, tech on the other, and tech art falls somewhere in between those two
Yeah.
things. There's some that are more towards art where they're just making visual effects, slightly more complicated art, maybe shaders, things like that. And there's some that are way more closer to engineering that are essentially just like front end engineers writing just complex software tools, things like that. But they're somewhere along that spectrum, right? And I think the most consistent thing that every tech artist has is they love problem solving to the
Mm.
point where like they will go after every problem that no one else wants to solve, and they're like, I'm annoyed by this. I'm going to fix it. The other big thing that tech artists usually have is a laziness. It's like, I don't want to click this button 500 times. I don't want other people to click this button 500 times. I'm going to make a script that will do this one time. And they just like want to solve these problems quickly because they don't like those repetitive actions over and over. And from that whole scope, there's a million different things that like there's
Yeah.
riggers, there's tool creators, there's procedural, tech artists, there's shader guy, there's all of those things. But I would say at the high level, that's kind of like all the things that a tech artist has in common. So they love solving problems. They're somewhere in between tech and art, and there's a sense of just like loving efficiency as well.
Dude, for sure. Now let's talk a little bit about like big games, because you got your start at Obsidian, but then you also soon after that made your way to Riot Games, right?
Yeah,
Um,
I went to Sony Santa Monica in
oh,
between
that's
there.
right. You had that in between. Well, that's a
Yeah.
pretty big studio as well.
Mhm.
Yeah, maybe just a brief pass on what your experience was like there, because I think it will serve as a really interesting contrast to where we are now, in terms of the current style of development we're in as a
Yeah.
team, which is obviously something I want our viewers to know a little bit about how we work. So, yeah, let's talk about that.
Yeah, I think it's actually, I'll talk a little bit about Obsidian as well,
Sure.
because I think it is important to kind of like paint the picture of who I am and the way I think. Um, so at Obsidian, I was doing art, and then I found out about this tech art position, which was like this, half artist, half engineer, and I was like so excited because I'm like, oh my God, someone made a job for me. This is amazing.
Yeah.
Like I'm so pumped. Um, and while we were at Obsidian, I was working on this really, really cool game. It was an Aliens RPG, and I was like, had a monitor playing Aliens movies the whole time while I was like making content for the game, and I was like, absolutely in love. But I started to notice this pattern where, we would have these like tile sets built that allowed us to like construct levels. And with these like pre-made tiles, it would take us about 2 weeks to make a level. And
Mm,
then we would play test the level and then find out that like, oh, it's not that fun in this area. And then it's like, well, we spent 2 weeks building this. We can't just like change it now. It's gonna take forever. And so we kept like building maps and then they weren't great and then just kind of like cutting them or leaving them to the side. And I was like, how are we ever going to get this game done? And apparently, our publishers thought the same thing and ended up canceling the project.
yeah.
And we had our own custom in-house engine, but we just couldn't create content fast enough. And then
Mm,
right after that, we got a publishing contract with Square Enix making Dungeon Siege 3, and we took that same engine that we had before, but we built an editor for it.
mm,
Uh, and with those literally the exact same assets we had for Aliens, we with that editor, instead of taking 2 weeks to build a level from beginning to end, it was 2 days. And all of a sudden with a tiny team, like we were around 50 to 70 people at the biggest,
mm,
but there was 4 environment artists, and
yeah.
we built a 25-hour RPG in less than a year and a half with like 4 people.
It's
And
amazing.
it blew my mind just to see like how much tools can like change game development and change the kind of game you can make. And it
Yeah.
was like a little like eye opener for me, right? Of the
Mm,
impact that can have. And when I left Obsidian, I went to Sony Santa Monica, and I worked on God of War Ascension, and God of War is this, extremely cinematic story based, like every scene is like sculpted and matters. And the pipeline for that was just so different from this like super fast RPG pipeline where it's just like make stuff and put it in. We were like building these set pieces every single
mm,
time. And so
right.
our editor was completely in Maya, and we were like literally reprogramming Maya to do all the things we needed it to. And
Wow.
I got to see like all these tools that I made at Obsidian that I thought I was like so cool for making, like they had made 10 years ago, And
Yeah.
so I came in just like humbled
Mm,
and like, I don't know what I'm doing. I need to
mm,
learn, and like learn so much from uh, what all the artists were doing there. But also saw the pain that comes from just not having an editor, just trying to build everything in Maya, where Maya crashes on you a lot, you lose your work.
wow.
You couldn't see your updates in real time, so you're having to build and wait 30 minutes to see an updating game and all those kinds of things. And
Yeah.
so um, that was, another kind of like moment for me where I'm like, huh, okay, like this isn't the best way to build games either. Uh, and then I ended up going to Riot after that, and after God of War, I was kind of like over trying to work on these big AAA games. I was just like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna work on games I love to play. And this was before League was a big thing in like
Right.
2012,
Yeah. You
2013.
were pretty early, right? Like
Yeah.
when you joined there.
And so I was just like, I just want to work on games I love to play, and
Yeah.
just was absolutely in love with League at the time, and was so excited to be there, and got to work on the update to Summoner's Rift. We took this like kind of Crayola, super noisy, colorful map and turned it into this like painterly masterpiece that you see
Hmm.
today. And probably like what I'm most proud of in my career in terms of doing.
It's
But
amazing. You guys did an amazing job of like taking something that was already familiar and not losing its roots, but also adding this like level of quality. It was really, really interesting to watch actually,
Mhm.
because yeah, the quality bar obviously made a massive step, but it still felt like the same game. I think you guys were
Yeah,
incredibly successful in that. Yeah.
yeah, and it was one of those things where it took way longer than it should have, and all of that. But I was so proud of what we ended up making, and
Mm.
um, you know, uh, as I was working on that project, uh, I started to so I get a little personal here,
Yeah, yeah.
and because I think players would appreciate it. Um, so there was one time where like we had shipped our beta, and I was just kind of like, uh, I think it was a good 3 weeks straight where I just didn't get any work done, and I
Mm.
was like, what is going on? Like something's wrong with me. Like why am I like, can I not get any work done right now? What's going on? And I went and talked to my doctor and discovered I had undiagnosed ADHD the whole time.
Hmm.
And so I'd been like kind of working my way through my career, just struggling with this, not even knowing that this was a thing. And it hit me really hard actually when I joined Sony because it was like an open office environment where there was
Yeah.
like so many things to distract me, and Riot was that times 10. And so it just like
Yeah.
hit me extra hard there. But I got diagnosed, started learning tools and techniques to work through it, and
Hmm.
got some medication for it, and all those things
Sure.
combined just really, like, I would say, unlocked me.
Hmm.
Within like 4 months of that, I had worked on the biggest tool I'd ever worked on in my career. Within 3 months of that, I took over as a pod lead on the Summer's Rift team. Uh, 3 months after that, I took over as the whole lead of that team, the product manager, and then
Wow.
went on to lead the kind of tools and tech team at Riot for League called Content Efficiency. But that was this like moment for me where I was like
Hmm.
kind of being held back this whole time, and it really just like unlocked me, and it was just like a really you know crucial kind of pivotal moment in my career, I would say.
Wow, that's pretty amazing, man. How interesting to have those sort of self-discoveries in real time too.
Hmm.
Like, is a weird comparison, but like I broke my nose a couple times in high school. I was in martial arts and soccer, just like a real kind of active dude, but it got to a point where I couldn't breathe out of my nose because I had broken my nose like
Hmm.
5, 6 times, right? And at some point, I was getting migraines because I couldn't breathe, and I ended up having to have surgery. And they fixed my nose, but I remember the time I woke up from surgery, and I think it's like a couple days. You kind of take all the packing
Hmm.
out and all the surgical stuff, and it was for the first time I could breathe through my nose,
Hmm.
and I don't even know how many years, right? It
Yeah,
was
wow.
like water flowing through my head. Like
Yeah,
it felt like there was this huge realization around like, dude, I had no idea what I didn't have access to, right? Like,
yeah.
and it was so I was just like it was very personal. It was a personal moment of like, oh my
Hmm.
gosh, I can breathe. I didn't realize I couldn't breathe. I couldn't through my nose, right?
Yeah,
And so anyways,
wow.
that kind of reminds me of that, where you're just
Yeah.
like, dude, I didn't know. I mean, I obviously don't know exactly what the experience was like
Hmm.
for you, but I'm imagining that was pretty interesting to unlock
Yeah.
that kind of potential, right?
Yeah, it's very like it was that like, oh shoot moment, like, oh my
Yeah.
God, I had no idea,
Hmm.
this is how normal people experience the world,
Yeah.
it's easy to like forget that or not even realize that you had this thing holding you back. Yeah, I
Hmm.
think it's very similar to what you described.
That's cool, dude.
Yeah.
Well, man, so congratulations on the
Yeah.
accomplishments at Riot. It's huge. And I think even amidst all that, from the personal side, like, and believe me, I understand what it's like working in those big dev environments. There is a lot of distraction, and I think it's
Mhm.
really interesting in contrast to how we're working now, where I just
Yeah.
live it. I live in my office space, just like nothing but 100%
Right.
focus, almost like the other extreme. But yeah, let's talk a little bit about your road to Super Evil Megacorp, and why you would choose to leave a studio like Riot, and what is it that brought you here. I think I'm really interested in that personally.
Yeah.
Hearing what it's like and maybe even comparing notes.
So there's kind of like a couple of steps in between that I'll
Yeah,
like
yeah.
briefly
Sorry,
touch
I
on.
know if I'm if I'm over
Yeah, no,
jumping,
no
I'd love
worries.
to hear your pickups on it. So,
Yeah, yeah. So had this really cool opportunity at Riot to like, take this. It was a very Maya-centric pipeline, similar to what
mm,
we had on God of War, and then led this team to create this editor for Riot, where we kind of took all of these little one-off tools that everyone had created, some in Maya, some in Python, some in C Sharp, C++, and merged them all into this tool suite that we called Riot Editor,
hmm
where artists could, VFX artists, if there was a bug in animation, like they didn't have to go to a different tool that they didn't know. Like you just click a button and it jumps you over to the animation side of things and fix the bug real quick, and you don't have to like wait and be blocked by someone, right? And so
yeah,
I got to like help make that transformation happen. And one of the things I really pushed for while I was there was building a level editor, because I regretted a lot of the ways we built Summoner's Rift.
mm,
And we ended up building a level editor super fast. Like it was one engineer and about like a month and a half to get a prototype in, and then a couple more months of just like polish.
mm,
And then they were building a bunch of game modes using that level editor, and it was cool to hear. I wasn't there when it happened, but I heard from a lot of people that were still at Riot that they couldn't have made Teamfight Tactics if it wasn't for that level editor.
oh,
And so it
dude,
was really cool to just like hear
that's
things
cool.
like that were able to happen, because of some of the things we did that really excited me. And so,
Dude,
um, yeah, so I left Riot, ended up starting my own company
mm,
called RoboWorld, and it was just like I want to try this, like
yeah,
I want to see what it's like to run a company and
hmm
really do it from scratch, and had this really fun idea for a game and kind of went at it, and we ended up getting a little bit of funding, which was really exciting, and
hmm
kind of got to keep things going for a bit. But we ended up running out of money towards the end, and I was pitching to publishers, pitching to all these things, but like couldn't pay the bills, and so ended up taking on a few contract jobs
yeah,
along the way to pay those bills. And one of them was building this iPad app, and I realized, as I was building it, that like, man, I miss making games. Like I as much fun as it is to make apps, and it was kind of like an artist tool, which was my forte. It wasn't games, and so
right,
I was really feeling that itch to get back into games. And around that time, Eduardo, who's the art director, uh, yeah, called me and was like, "Hey, man, I've heard like you're a really good tech artist,
hmm
and that you might be like somewhat interested." And I'm like, "Well, I am running my company now, and if we do get funding, I don't know, but like, let's talk.
yeah,
Like, I want to. This sounds like a really good fit for me." Kind of flying up, talking to everyone, and just realized like, okay, there, Super Evil's like has this really amazing engine, the Evil engine. It's really like optimized and can do like more in mobile than any other game company can if they're just using Unreal or Unity, which are
yeah,
great for like building games, but you can't push the tech to the limit using those tools. Um, and they're building these like top down games, and I'm like, that's like my expertise, like
yeah,
Dungeon Siege was a top-down game. The Neverwinter Nights was like that, back
mm,
when I worked on it. League was, and I'm like,
yeah,
kind of like really good at this. And then they're trying to like take this, technology that was like really focused, built in this Maya pipeline. They're wanting to make that a multi-game technology,
mm,
and make it more sustainable. I'm like, this is actually like a really good fit for my expertise. And I hadn't worked in mobile before, and was like actually pretty excited to learn, more about that. And as much as I loved working at Riot, there's challenges when it comes to working at a 3,000 person company.
yeah,
And I really loved the small team aspect of that I had when I was running my own company. And I was kind of like, man, I would love to just like go back to a small team, learn a bunch of new things that I don't know, apply my expertise, and see see what I can contribute and see what I can learn here. And so that really like drew me to Super Evil,
yeah,
is I felt like I had a lot to offer and a lot to learn from the people
yeah,
here.
dude, that's awesome, man. And I'm curious now that you've been here. So you joined before I did,
November.
right? November. Okay, so we were right about the same time then. Pretty much right about the same time. Yeah, what has it been like? Has it met your expectations? What has surprised you? What have maybe been, some of the highlights in terms of your expectations? And then maybe what are the things that surprised you a little bit? I'd love to hear, you know, a little processing around, is it exactly what you thought? Where were you surprised? That kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, so the way I kind of like approach things when I came in. It's like, I'm just going to take the first month to like study and observe and just like figure out what the company's about, what the state of the tools are in, what people are trying to accomplish with this game, like all of those things. And so a lot of what I did in the first month was just like interview people, ask a bunch of questions, what's working for you, what isn't, what's easy to do, what isn't, just like an opportunity to get to know everyone. And so after doing that, I came up with like a list of like, hey, here are the things that like
Mm.
if we improve these, like we could go so much further. And one of the things I was pleasantly surprised by was our CTO Tommy,
Yeah.
over the winter break, like right after I had recommended this, just like
Yeah.
made a level editor.
Oh,
Like
dude.
in like 2 weeks, he just got like so pumped um, about it, and he just like built it. And I was like, okay, awesome. Like we're
Yeah.
going, like to contrast that at Riot when I suggested we make a change to our engine. I had to like create a PowerPoint presentation
Yeah.
and then have all these like alignment meetings with people to
Yeah.
like get everyone on board. And then like I got everyone on the same page that like we needed this thing. And then it was like a year and a half until we got like the engineer resources available to like
Yeah.
actually focus on it. And so it was like, you know, just a great surprise to just see
Yeah.
Tommy be like, cool, let's go,
Yeah,
and
dude, that blew my mind, man,
yeah,
when we came back, because I do remember it floating like, "Oh, yeah, of course we need that. That would be really awesome. Be able to make things much more agilely and make multiple game modes, things like that that we're already working on, which is super cool to see the fruit of all that labor." But like, yeah, to know that he just, yeah, boom, banged it out. Like that's a very Tommy
yeah,
Tommy thing. Oh, we'll get him on here at some point because
cool.
he's a fascinating one for sure. So that, yeah, okay, so great surprise. One thing I've noticed and really have appreciated too about you, John Eric, since the start is that this team is really kind of coming together over the course of since we've joined. There's a lot of new faces, and
Hmm.
I think that's one of the reasons having a series like this is going to be cool, is because there are a lot of new folks that work for this company now. So we're learning how to work together, and then we're also learning kind of what the new or current or emerging identity of this company is. And I'm
Hmm.
curious to get your take on that. Like, if you had to describe what you feel like super evil means, or super evil as a company represents, I'm curious to get your take. Like, how would you describe this company, the talent inside, the work that the company's doing, the spirit of that work? And even though we know a lot of this is somewhat formative as we begin to kind of know it ourselves, I'm curious to get your take on that. Like, what do you think represents super evil represents?
Yeah, I mean, I think like we take the evil part to heart, especially like we want to make as much money out of as many players as possible. No, that's like
Exactly.
absolutely not what we are, which
Yeah,
is really cool. There's something a little bit kind of like sarcastic about the term
totally.
super evil that I love. And it's been like really cool to have this uh to come to this company, completely different culture, but like everyone wants to make great games and make games that players love, to the point where a lot of vainglory players are like, why didn't you take more money from us, like we wish this could have
Yeah,
survived. And I'm sure not everyone felt that way, of course, but like
yeah,
I think, yeah, like everyone was just trying to make great games. Like we don't want to fall into that mobile trap of charging $60 for a character or whatever. We actually want to make content that people can consume and love and really enjoy and spend their time with others. And so like that part of things, I think like uh, really excites me about the company.
yeah,
But I think there is, we call ourselves masterminds or whatever.
yeah,
I think there's this aspect of just like having a really high quality bar that everyone pushes for here. That's, different from a lot of the other companies I've worked at, where it's not about like getting stuff out fast or getting it to be good enough. It's like we want to be the best and make it look as good and great as possible, and we will like push further than um, others to like get it to be that good.
yeah,
And so I think it's this nice like kind of mix of just like attention to quality and wanting to make things amazing, but also like creating great content and games for players that they love and want to build a community around. So
yeah.
so I
That's
don't know, that
cool,
was
man. That's
long-winded, but
cool.
that's kind of like
No,
what I
it's
see the
great.
company culture
It's
as. Yeah.
it's super cool, and to riff a little bit on sort of some of the things you were talking about earlier about the differences between Super Evil and larger companies and process and all of that. I think it has been fascinating to be working at a company where it's just like innate trust, where it's like, no, 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 yeah, if you think that's right, that's what we're doing, and down to the point where that makes your runway around decision making and your ability to move from pitching an idea or a decision to actually executing is like like so short.
Hmm.
And that's been a massive change for me, because I think it was something you always hoped a company like Blizzard would have. You're like, man, I wish we could just make these decisions faster, we'd be much more relatable,
Hmm.
this, that, and the other, right? Like from a community perspective, as well as our ability to move quicker on the product. And like here it's almost like entirely the opposite, and so
Yeah.
that's been both interesting adjustment for me, but also like a sense of like, wow, this is moving like warp speed, right?
Hmm.
So the ability to move warp speed, but also still try to keep, like high quality goals in mind. Like
Yeah.
the opposite being that mentality, that old Blizzard mentality of like, well, it's done when it's done. And it's like, that's not Super Evil either. There's this sense
Hmm.
of like, no, 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 we're on a mission and we're on a task
Yeah.
and we're only giving ourselves X amount of time to do it, but it's still going to be great. Like
Hmm.
there's this tension between like quality and speed that I think I find like it's almost a paradox, but it's also, I think, really healthy, because it
Yeah.
sort of pushes you to think about your work um, with both of those constraints really tightly tuned. And
Yeah.
we're likely to fail as we move through this a little bit, but at least we know we're trying to run on all cylinders and make the most of the time we have while still trying
Hmm.
to hit really high goals. So I think that's a spirit that I've really appreciated. And we're still in the process as a team of figuring out like how exactly to tune that formula,
Right.
um, and where we give and where we put a stake in the ground and say no, no. I think that's been kind of fun to be a part of that
Hmm.
process, to be a part of a team that's like willing to look at themselves critically through those lenses,
Hmm.
where we realize we're kind of formative and it's like, yeah, we're learning, right? Like, so anyways,
Yeah.
I've appreciated
And
that. And I think you've been a really solid leader in that regard of like
I appreciate that.
helping us uh, be open while also critical of the decisions we're making, and holding a higher standard about why we're making those decisions and being very
Right.
intentful about those decisions. So I think that's been really cool. So
Yeah, and I think like when I kind of look at what Super Evil used to be versus kind of what it's becoming and what it is now, because like there has been such a change in the people here and the culture, that I think like there was this focus, especially on Vainglory, on like this quality and speed that you mentioned of just like let's get content out, let's do it. But there was never this kind of focus on scalability. How do
right,
we keep making this content quickly, and how do
right,
we you know, make this content to where it could apply to different games that we might want to make and things like that.
sure.
It was just like, let's just like like let's get a hero, let's get someone to just like get this done, and then
Hmm.
bam. uh and I think one of the muscles we're starting to exercise now is like, okay, it's not just about getting stuff out, and and making it look good. It's also about like, how do we keep making this stuff? Like how do we keep put ourselves in a place where it doesn't take forever to make content, it doesn't take
Yeah,
forever to make changes, but we can actually keep making those things long term.
that's interesting. Yeah, it's like it's not just about what the product looks like on the outside. There's like this, well, how do we bring that super evil quality into our processes and how
Hmm.
we make them more efficient internally for the long term, while still also having an output that equates to our history, or
Yeah.
what it's meant thus far to represent Super Evil Megacorp, right?
Hmm.
So I think that you're right. That's been a really cool evolution to kind of watch happen in real time.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about how we work as a team. We've gone through a lot as a world and even as a company. When you and I first came on, we were working remotely already, while the rest of the team had the office there in San Francisco and San
Yeah.
Mateo. But I would love to get your take on how that's been. What has it been like to work remotely, particularly given your background, coming out of working out of big studios,
Yeah.
and then yeah, what has been good about that? What has been bad? Where has it been easy, interesting, more efficient? Like, what's your
Hmm.
take on remote work?
Yeah. So like when I left Riot and started my own company, I actually like felt really lonely.
Mm,
I found myself like just stuck at home for days at a time and kind of like going a little, stir crazy, and ended up spending a little extra money to get a co-working space just to like be around people and go out for lunch. And I found that like I consider myself to be an introvert, like I love just sitting at home playing games and having my alone time, but I I still need some social interaction, and so
Yeah.
uh, I kind of already knew coming in what I needed. And so when I started at Super Evil, I first of all immediately went up for 2 weeks straight just to like get to know everyone and meet the team. And then, created these regular check-ins where it was like bi-weekly or monthly. I would come up for a day or two and hang out with everyone. And then on my own time, I actually wouldn't work at home much. I would go to cafes or go to a co-working space just to be around other people and get that recharge.
Yeah.
But since all this stay-at-home stuff has been happening, it's been really hard for me to get that anymore. And so I think
Yeah.
we've done a really good job of having that like always on Slack, or not Slack,
Right.
the Zoom call that like gets some social interaction, which is nice.
Yeah.
And then I've been just trying to go out on walks and hang out in some Discord channels with coworkers and chatting every once in a while. And so been finding like ways to get some of that back, but it has been really hard, and I can't wait to like get back to where I can, work a little more outdoors and not in the same space every day again.
Yeah. It's interesting too to talk about like, I totally feel you on that, by the way. I actually, it's, it sort of augments a problem that I already have, which is like, I have realized working remotely that I am like, it's like a black hole. Like my ability to pour myself into work and lose track of time is already a problem. Like it's a
Hmm.
problem for me, and it's almost to a point of unhealth where I'll just realize, oh my gosh, I've been sitting here for 3 hours. I haven't moved.
Yeah.
I've just been working. And then now the fact that it's like, well, there's nowhere to go. It's like almost
Right.
like a double problem because it's my natural bent to, and I didn't know that before working remotely, that that's my natural bent. Like I will just stay here all day.
Mhm.
Um, and now that it's like I have to stay here all day.
Yeah.
I have to figure out how to be creative on how to take breaks. And sometimes that is walking and, putting the mask on, but
Yeah.
going out and, dodging my neighbors, but saying hi all the same. It's a strange problem to have,
It is.
but
Yeah, we're lucky to have like a little tiny bit of grass in our backyard, and so we've
yeah.
been doing like picnic lunches and things. My
Oh,
girlfriend and I out
dude.
there, which has been like just nice to get some sun and like be outside a bit. But yeah,
Yeah.
like I used to have this moment before where it was time to go home, pack up all my stuff, like put it in my backpack, take it back to my house, and just like turn off. And now like I don't have that moment
Mm,
anymore, and I have to like force myself to do it, or else it will go on indefinitely. Like I will work way longer than I should and end up burning myself out. And so
yeah.
I totally feel you, and the like discipline required to do that has been definitely like tough. Like I'm kind of lucky my girlfriend gets off a little earlier than I do, because she's
Mm,
like, all right, it's dinner time, like
yeah.
come on, like
Dude.
let's do this.
If I didn't have my family here to just like literally force that on me, I think that would be a problem. I'm really grateful
Yeah.
they're here because like, kids gotta eat dinner, we gotta
Yeah.
do bed routines and all that stuff. Like that 6 o'clock time frame is such a hard stop for me
Hmm.
that it has to be. And I'm really grateful for it because like you said, you
Yeah.
kind of just have to put these milestones in your day and hack your day for someone like me to just force you to walk away,
Hmm.
because there's always something more to do. I mean, making games is so complicated and so
Yeah.
needy, and there's always that drive to want to make things better. And you
Hmm.
just really do have to focus on yourself. I know that's it's a very cliche to say, but I really have to
You have to. Yeah.
just like draw it in cement, like,
Yeah. Because like
so
you can do that for a day or two, but then the day three, like you're just not the same person. You're not
yeah,
focused as much. You're not present. Like you can't solve problems as much.
yeah,
And so like you can do these sprints, but this is a marathon, and
you're
like
right.
you got to keep up that pace.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right, man. And it's been interesting too to watch Super Evil's confidence around remote work. I think when I first joined too, it was a little like,
Hmm.
I was a little like, can you make
Yeah.
games remotely? Like, is that something that's really possible? I hear people want to do it, and yeah, that's the future. But like, is it possible? Like, can you
Hmm.
really make great games? And of course, my early period when it was just like you coming up every 2 weeks, it was sort of like, ah, I think it's possible. I think it's
Yeah.
there. And then like the whole COVID-19 thing hits, and we're just like, there's no turning back. I feel like the company's already just like, nope, this is who we are now. Like we work like this, and
Yeah.
maybe we go back to a little bit of who we were before, but no, this is like who we are. And it's been interesting to watch the company's confidence sort of cement itself in being capable of making great games remotely. And
Yeah.
I love that because I think it's given us a lot of courage to think in new creative ways about
Yeah.
what it means to be a part of this team and, all of that. So that's been both it's been eye-opening for me, but
Yeah.
also exciting because it's like there is an element of collaboration and sort of accessibility to talent and things like that that all you open up with this remote work that is going to be
Hmm.
kind of interesting to watch unfurl for us as a company, especially as we've
Yeah.
gotten more confident about it. So well, let's talk just briefly about Catalyst Black
Yeah.
specifically as a game. We're still really early on, kind of even talking about this game and bringing it to life publicly. But talk to me about what are some of your biggest hopes for this game. It could be anywhere. It could be just like, what do you hope for the game for the community? What do you hope for the game in terms of your career and how you'll be able to grow as a developer? I'm just curious to get your take on what your biggest hopes are for the experience around Catalyst Black.
I mean, I really hope it's not only a game that like players love, but players love for like years to come. And I
Mm,
think that's the thing that I'm hoping we can get to, because like right now it's like really fun and really fun to play. But there's I think some pieces missing to like make it keep being fun to play. Like to keep
sure.
drawing you back in and wanting to come back.
Yep.
Um, but I especially love the aspect of like, man, it's just so fun to play internally, with you guys and to
Yeah, it
joke
is.
around and to
By the
to
way, Jean-Eric is a badass at this game. Like I always, whenever I see him, I'm just like, and I'm gonna go this way.
right? I've played a lot of League, and the skills definitely
Yeah, dude.
translate over. So I've been enjoying it a lot.
I'm like, if I have a sniper rifle or like a rocket launcher, then I'm like, I'm good. I can keep my distance and kind of like. But I know when I see you on the field, I'm always much more wary.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, it's a really fun game, and I hope that we can like keep making these interesting modes and the
Yeah,
primals and all of that. That would just like add that extra layer of like getting people to want to come back and keep playing and try out the new primals or whatever it is.
yeah, dude,
And
that's awesome.
so, yeah, I'm pretty excited about like just the like moment to moment gameplay that we have right now is just like so much fun.
Yeah, it really is, man.
Yeah,
All right, Jean-Eric, I know you're a busy man. I really appreciate you being kind of the first guinea pig on this Meet the Team series. And hopefully a couple months from now, I'll have you back on and we'll even talk about what we've learned
yeah,
between now and then, not just about Catalyst Black, but ourselves as a team. So thank you for being here. And any final words for the community, the folks that are watching?
yeah. I mean, thank you so much for having me and setting all of this up. Like, it's great to be a part of it, and it's really fun connecting with all the players and letting them kind of get behind the scenes of it. So appreciate you taking the time to put all this together. And yeah, like I said before, JXE on Discord. So feel free to reach out to me. And super excited to get to know all of you and get a game in your hands ASAP.
That's awesome. And if you're watching and you have yet to join our Discord, please do. It's discord.gg/catalystblack. We're going to be showcasing new content there before the rest of the public. So it is definitely the place to be if you want all the updated news on what we're doing and what we're bringing to the world with Catalyst Black. So thanks for being here, everybody. We'll see you very soon and never settle for the lesser evil.